for something a little bit different. This week I'm going to do a video on my trek through Manaslu, which is in the Himalayas in Nepal. So starting off here, we have a video of me getting some gear ready in Toronto, and then from Toronto we flew to Kathmandu and did a bit of exploring in Kathmandu. There's a lot of really great historic sites to see in the city of Kathmandu. We took some time and we had some did some tourist stuff. We had tea at some really great places and some meals. So here's a few shots of the city of Kathmandu. Basically, the three of us flew in, and we stayed with friends that live in the city. Here's a great shot of ladies getting water in the city of Kathmandu. There isn't a fantastic amount of electricity available in the city. Okay, so here's the bus station in Kathmandu. It was a long bus ride up into the mountains. I think it was about 8 or 10 hours. It was really interesting, really uncomfortable. The bus, the seats were worn through and you were sitting on bare metal. Really cool bus. You can see on the side there it says "Punk's Not Dead," so just kind of your unique kind of Asian flavor. Okay, and so we had some difficulties reaching our destination by bus, so we had to hike the last little bit of the way, and we made it to Sodikola. So this is the village of Sodikola. It was absolutely beautiful, tropical weather. It was a great place to start the trek. And from Sodikola, we started our trek up into the mountains. This was our first staircase, kind of a stairway to heaven type of concept. Really got us into things. Just beautiful countryside. Lots of climbing, lots of up, lots of down. Okay, and this is the only photo I have of the second place that we stayed at, which was called Machakola. It was a beautiful town. The reason I don't have a lot of photos is because we really enjoyed the town and interacting with the locals. Then you can see we get into the big suspension bridges, our first of the big suspension bridges, which are kind of a non-stop sort of thing when you're hiking in the hills. Okay, and this is the village of Jagat. So this is the park entrance. So really nice climbing after Jagat, kind of really arid, sunny. We were relaxed, we were moving well. It was hot, we weren't used to hiking, but it was just fantastic. We were following the river valley up through the Himalayas. Big Box Canyon is basically what we followed, and you can see the cactuses here. So here comes a great shot of the river valley. This is the river valley that we were hiking up for quite some time. Now we proceeded up through the Box Canyon, and the weather started to get quite a bit cooler. We were gaining some big elevation. What we found as we got further up is we came across some really interesting waterworks where the local people had made, I guess you'd call them channels of water that drove little tiny mills, grain mills. So you see the sluiceway there. It provided kind of water flowing through gravity, which spun these mills, which they used to mill their grain. It was one of the most interesting things for me on the Manaslu part. Here's even a prayer wheel that was being turned by the force of water. So they have this resource available to them, and they use it. They use it to turn mills and do the jobs that would be done by people normally, but here you can see the natural ground cover, which is cannabis or marijuana. It was everywhere. It just grew wild. Um, that was interesting to see, different from home. And we would take lunch breaks at tea houses, same as we stayed at tea houses. So this is a little lunch break we took. You can see we're starting to feel a little bit fatigued here at this point. But up and up it goes, you know, a little bit of up and a little bit of down. The rains were really falling, and you can see we've got our rain gear on, but it's hot, so um, and then into the bamboo forests. The bridges were really interesting. Some of the bridges were suspension bridges were pretty sketchy, but you know we had some fun with them. This one, my partner pretended to cross, but then there was the real suspension bridge beside it that we actually did cross. So a little bit of fun there. A look at the guest house in Jagat. Very nice, built from timber, fairly modern guest house with comfortable rooms. Of course, the tablecloth had marijuana or cannabis leaves on it. And our first look at the peak on Manaslu. So we're starting to get up a bit. You can see the trail's kind of muddy because there's been quite a bit of rain. Really interesting. As we increased in elevation, the river got really interesting. Lots more bridges crossing the river. But then we started to get up into the famous rhododendron forest. So these are wild rhododendrons where you hear about the famous bees. There was lots of fog and mist. We were in the clouds at this point, but it was absolutely beautiful, kind of eerie. You could hear cowbells in the distance, but you couldn't always see the cows. And then at other times you were hiking up the mountainside with the cattle, which are you know an important part of the local economy. The animals were you know they were in some areas they were treated well. The pack animals sometimes were in rather rough shape. They had you know some saddle sores and that sort of thing. But it was really beautiful. The rhododendron. Okay, so Deng. Deng was I had a really bad head cold by this point. I was pretty wiped out, so I stayed around town. It was a really interesting guest house that we stayed at. As you can see, the washroom was a bit like a dungeon. The building felt a little bit like a medieval castle. It was a really fantastic place to stay. Of course, there's no heat in any of these tea houses. This tree was interesting. I thought to me, it reminded me of the Yoda's tree on Dagobah. So I took a couple of photos of it. Like I said, I was feeling pretty tired, so my partners, they went up to a monastery and did a little bit of an acclimation hike, but I was just too tired with my head cold, so I explored the town, but I was pretty happy with exploring the town. It was really interesting, and I saw a lot of cool stuff. It was you know it was pretty basic. You know the farm animals were contained by stones and wooden fences, and they lived in the courtyards adjacent to the people. But you know the place felt fairly healthy, and you know you could see the tourist dollars at work. Okay, and we continued up from Deng to a town by the name of Namrung. Namrung was pretty rough, and not only was the town rough, but I was feeling really rough. I was sick with a really bad head cold, uh, really low on energy, and that sort of thing. So it was what it was. But here's a little cow that poked his head out through the rhododendrons at me. Actually scared me quite a bit. But here's a couple of kids that were locals from the village of Namrung. Now I don't have any photos of the town of Namrung itself, just because I was so sick at that point that I didn't really have the spare energy for photography. Little baby cow here that was nice to see. Family of, I don't know if they're cows or probably yaks is actually what they are. But it was nice seeing the baby and the family traveling together. Not something that we would normally see in suburban Ottawa or Toronto. Okay, so up and up we go, further into the clouds. As always, we would stop at tea houses whenever possible for lunch and tea. We weren't, having any kind of beer or any kind of alcoholic beverages. The altitude was just high, too high. So just tea and meals for break. Okay, Samagoan. Samagoan, we spent the night at. Samagoan is one of the coolest towns I've ever been to. It was just so interesting. The open sewers and the cattle and the wide open spaces. Had a bit of a funny incident here. I ate rice at the tea house, which was really dry, and I swallowed it wrong, and I choked, and I took some hot chocolate to wash it down, and that expanded the rice in my throat, and I had a pretty nasty choking experience. So that's my funny remembrance of Samagoan. But really nice alpine plains, I guess you'd call them, kind of plains between the mountains. You could stay at the tea houses, but there were also people staying in tents in the area. But we stayed at the tea. Okay, so up and up from Samagoan. At this point, I was starting to feel quite a bit better. My head cold was over, and we were really up into some clear mountain air. So we reached the town of Samdo. Sando, and one of my partners and I did an acclimation hike, and you can see us doing the acclimation hike, looking back down on the village below us. Unfortunately, my partner broke his camera at this point, so we were limited now to just my camera. So just one camera between three guys on a trip like this. It was here are some blue sheep that we observed, and they were really beautiful creatures, traveling in families, or I don't know if you'd call it a herd, probably. Just fantastic shots of these blue sheep up in the mountains. We came back down, and we found our third partner was relaxing, enjoying some tea and some laughs with locals, even though the language exchange was limited. The people in these northern Himalayan villages are just so warm. You can make a facial expression or a gesture, and if it's funny, people will laugh. You don't need to have that common language. Just make a joke. All right, so this was the closest point we would get to Tibet. I can't remember the exact distance, but we traveled fairly close to Tibet. Here we are exploring a fairly modern hydroelectric, I guess you'd call it a micro-hydro project, which these micro-hydro projects were everywhere in this region. And so these people up in these high alpine regions, in some towns, had more reliable electricity than was present in Kathmandu. And then we started our climb up to Larkapeti, or the base camp. It was a pretty sketchy walk. There was a big fall if you made a mistake. But after a short hike, we made it to Larkapeti. Okay, Larkapeti, or Manaslu Base Camp. A lot of people stayed in tents. We stayed in one of the rooms. It was cold. It was really cold. It was 10, 15 below. But three of us stayed in one room with the beds basically side by side. I made a mistake. I brought a 0 rated down sleeping bag when I should have brought a much warmer sleeping bag. We also did an acclimation hike after reaching Larkapeti. So we hiked up through past the glacier, and it was a really impressive glacier. You can see the glacier in the photos there. Basically, all the rocks on top of the snow, and we hiked up a fair distance trying to get acclimated for the next leg. And the next morning, we started our big ascent of Larkia Pass. It was cold. It was exhausting. We had to drink a lot of water. It was big alpine stuff, big terrain, small people. We really had a blast though, because it just felt very real. There were avalanches triggering on the mountainsides distal to us. You can see the snow-capped peaks all around. We made it around noontime to the pass. Here's a few hero shots with our guide. We didn't use porters, but we did use a guide, which is required. Our guide was Tech. He was a fantastic guy. He was local to the area originally, but he worked in Kathmandu, or out of Kathmandu. So yeah, there's our hero shots. We're way up high, and it's cold, and the air is thin, and we were feeling pretty good. I don't have a lot of shots of the descent. I was feeling really tired on the descent. My partners had a little bit more energy. They were traveling a bit ahead of me, but it was a tough descent. It was actually harder than the climb. The downhill was something else. Okay, so yeah, big descent, and we made it down into Bimtang, and I think we were all feeling pretty good. We had a big meal when we reached Bimtang. Here's a picture of one of the porters passed out. He'd had a few drinks. There's a shot of just the last portion of the descent, but that was nothing. It was hundreds or thousands of feet like that. And here's a Swedish camping group that descended the same day as us, and they stayed in tents in Bimtang. And from that point on, things were really pleasant. You know, we napped. It was warm. It was sunny. We really enjoyed the descent from that point on. Eventually, we made it to what is a road in the Himalayas. I got a little funny photo here. One of my partners dropped his sunglasses, and I put them on to take a photo of me finding his sunglasses that we would reveal to him later. So that's it. Thank you for watching the Travel by Water channel. We weren't traveling by water, but that's our trip to Manaslu.